Hello everybody, and welcome back to the final part of this disassembly and reassembly of a G&G Raider. If you've been following since the start, you've realised how much of the Raider has actually been disassembled. So what we're going to do now is reassemble everything. So I'm going to put the gearbox back into the lower receiver and reassemble the rails and the two-piece outer barrel and everything else, so that it's actually a complete Raider again and actually usable. So we're going to start off here now with the lower receiver. One of the first things you want to do is pop this plate back in. I already done it because I didn't want to lose this. It's so kind of small, so pop that back in if you haven't already done so. Next thing you want to do is get the bolt catch and put it in like so. Put this aside for a sec, and then you want to get the small spring that came out of the selector plate here and put it back in. So I'm going to get my flathead again and just feed that in like so, because if you forget to put that back in while you're putting the gearbox in, it's one of those pieces that you can actually forget to put in and only realize you forgot it when everything else is put back together. So if you don't put it in, the cutoff lever is not going to function the way it's supposed to, so make sure you put that back in. And the next thing we're going to do is feed the wires through the back of the gearbox and the bottom of the gearbox for the motor. So just like that. Now, it being a plastic receiver, it is kind of easier to work with than a metal one because it obviously kind of expands a bit when I need it to. So keep that in mind. You might need to just kind of, you know, force it in a bit. So next thing I'm going to do is pop this rear pin in. I would suggest that you put this pin in before you put the grip back on it, because the pistol grip actually pulls the gearbox slightly down, and it can actually misalign the holes on the gearbox and the receiver. So if you don't put this pin in now, it could actually be that you need to take the grip off and then put the pin back in and put the grip back on. So make sure you put this pin in now. So next thing I'm going to do is put the grip on. And like I said in the previous video, make sure you keep the screws in there. These being angled, you need to kind of put them through the grip. And you should be able to see them through the top of the grip, or the bottom of it, technically. Stand the gearbox up. And there we go. It should fit on. So now I'm going to get the screwdriver again and tighten these up. Make sure that you do tighten these a good bit so that the grip doesn't wobble, but you need to make sure that you don't over tighten them, because you can actually pull the head and along with the built-in washer of the screw off, and it's happened to me a few times. But you need to make sure you don't do that, because, you know, obviously then the screws aren't going to keep the pistol grip on. So tighten, but don't over tighten. So there we go. Now, next thing I'm going to do is put the motor back into the grip. There should be either your motor's either going to have colours on it, in which case it's easy red with red. Most of the time you'll just have a plus symbol on it, so you want to make sure that the red goes to the plus and the black goes to the, well, in this case it's not actually marked, but you want to make sure that the red goes to the plus, so obviously the black one goes to the minus then, which is the other one. So in my case it just pops in. Make sure you can push it down and it kind of bounces in like that, because if it doesn't, it could be catching on the inside of the gearbox, or it might not be in properly. So make sure you can kind of, it bounces in like that. Connect the spade connectors on the motor. Some wires can actually be quite annoying to work with because they can be very rigid and they won't actually bend properly. So, you know, there can be a lot of fiddling around with this, so you can actually get frustrated quite easily. So just take your time with it. So next is the base plate, or the heatsink plate. So I'm going to put this little piece of metal on top of the motor, because otherwise it's going to fall off and I might actually slide it behind the motor. But it should stay inside the base plate. They're designed to be kind of stuck in the base plate, so it shouldn't even come out. So again, like we did when we took apart the gearbox, or took out the motor, you want to make sure you press down on the base plate and don't release it just because you've got one screw in, because again, if you release it just with one screw in, it can actually put a lot of pressure on just one screw that's already in there, and it might damage it or even break it off. So there you go. That's all done now. Next is the stock and the buffer tube. So what you want to start with is the sling swivel, and these usually only go in one way. So you got a little design here that's not on the outside, and that'll fit into the back of the gearbox, into the back of the receiver here. So you want to make sure that this all stays nice and together. And there's usually a groove in the bottom of this that the wires kind of feed through. So you want to make sure that it follows that channel. Next, I'm going to feed my control wire for my MOSFET through. It might not necessarily apply to you because I have an aftermarket MOSFET in. So again, like I said, if you've got a metal washer that comes out, this is going to be a lot easier. So I actually have to kind of feed this through a metal washer that's built into the back of into the buffer tube or stock tube. I suppose stock tube is probably more accurate, seeing there's buffer tube is, you know, there's no real buffer in there. But it's whatever you want to call them, I suppose. Next, what I want to do is get the screw, and because there's so many wires in the back of this, this is actually going to be kind of a nightmare to try to put it back in, but I'm going to try my best to do it kind of as elegantly as possible as well. Another thing to note is that most buffer tubes will have, if you're lucky anyway, one side will go down further, so you can actually get to the screw a bit easier. In my case, it doesn't actually have that, but it'd be nice if it did, because it'll make everything a lot easier. Next thing I'm going to do is connect these wires up again. I want to make sure that the cover of the wire actually goes over the connectors. Gives a bit of protection. Now, what I'm going to do now is put the buffer tube back on, and the buffer tube will only go on one way, because there's actually grooves on the outside of this receiver that will follow rails on the inside of the buffer tube. So make sure you follow them. So again, long screwdriver. That's handy. Make sure, again, like I said, don't over tighten this, because it can actually damage the spring guide or the screw itself. So there we go. Done. Just want to reconnect up my MOSFET so it actually works. Okay, I usually leave the socket to last because it's just extra weight and it's just annoying to work with. Next thing I'm going to do is put the mag release back on. So what you want to do is separate them if you've done what I did there, and put this side in, hold it in with your one hand, and then put the spring over like that. And if you've got a system like I do where you need to kind of screw them loose, you can just screw this side on first a bit. Okay, so what you want to do is basically put this button on one side, just screw it in a tiny bit, and then you will push it in like you would do when you're releasing a mag. And if it's a radar, you want to push this back, this bolt back, and push the bolt release in a bit, so that you can kind of push the bolt release back and this doesn't get in the way. So you want to twist this clockwise, twist it anti-clockwise to get it off. So Make sure you don't go kind of over the top with this and tighten it too much that you won't be able to get it off again next time, because you know the world is a weird place where you can actually, you know, you could do one thing one way and then not be able to take it off next time. So that should be fine there. So that's the upper receiver pretty much done. I'll put the stock on it now before I move any further. Okay, right, I just kind of skipped all of me trying to mess around with the stock and putting it back on, because it's not really relevant that much. I mean, your stock will probably just slide back on straight away because you don't have a MOSFET. So I'll put away the lower receiver for now, and we'll get the upper receiver out. And the first thing we need to do is put back on this bolt cover. So what we want to do is separate these. This can actually be quite annoying, because usually there is a little hook on this that will sit on that, but mine doesn't have that. I'm not too sure if most other radiators will have it or not, but if it does, it'll make your life a lot easier for you. So basically what you want to do is put this in and push the rod kind of just a little less than halfway out the other side of the gap, and then you want to just put the spring on with the longer arm resting against the outside of the dust flap. Now you don't want to just push it straight through, because what you're going to get then is this, and it's not going to work properly. So what you want to do is push it back out, and what you need to do now is twist this. You actually need to twist this spring around itself. So you need to twist it towards towards the receiver, and twist it around, and then face it. Have it facing against the receiver. And that's what's actually going to cause it to tension up against the bolt cover, so when you release it, it's actually going to open up again. Okay, so it might take a few times to do this. Again, it can get very frustrating and very aggravating if you keep at it. So if you do find yourself getting annoyed, my advice is just to stop, because you end up breaking stuff otherwise. Alright, again, I just paused it there just to save a bit of time. Again, it took me about 5 minutes there just to get it back on. It will take a while, but you basically just want to make sure that you put the rod halfway through, feed the spring on, and then twist this around towards the dust flap and around. You might need to bend it out a bit and then feed it around. But if, like I said, if your spring has a little hook on it that'll actually sit over this groove, this edge here, it'll make it a lot easier, because it means that it won't keep slipping out of place, which it did for me. So when you have this in, make sure that you don't try refrain from kind of shaking it upside down like that, because if this slides out, which is what that C-clip is for that I explained in the first video, this might actually just kind of slide out like this. But I'm going to go ahead and put the rail system back on it real quick so that it doesn't come out. So next is the barrel and the so again, I'm going to use my barrel nut lock, and I'm going to tighten these again like I did when I first took this apart, loosening it. Okay, so when those two grub screws are tightened, that should stop that from pushing in and out. And next we're going to do is get the gas tube and rail. I'm also going to get this one, I'm at it. So what we're going to now is put the gas tube in. So basically the gas tube goes in, it needs to go in, there's usually a bend in the gas tube downwards, so you want to make sure that that bend is facing downwards like that, so it goes down, because otherwise it won't actually feed in. So put the gas tube on like that, and then feed the rail system over it. Now when you get to the top, you'll actually encounter that metal plate. So I'm just going to take the metal plate out for now, and then feed the metal plate back over. So like that. So there we go. I just want to make sure that the gas tube has stayed where I wanted to. Yes, it has. Perfect. Okay. I've got the screw. Screw that back in. So next thing you want to do is push this panel down again, like you did when you first took this apart, and get the A-post and fit this on, like so. And then you want to get your smaller Allen key again, and basically just tighten the grub screws. Now, you want to tighten these grub screws kind of so that one side isn't kind of dominant over the other. So tighten one side a tiny bit, and then tighten the other side again, and keep doing that until they're both tight. The grub screws might not go all the way in, that's okay, just as long as they're tight. In my case, the one on the left side now has gone all the way in, but the one on the right side is still kind of sticking out, so that's not a major problem. I'm not too worried about that. But, you know, as long as everything is staying secure, it should be okay. So now, what you want to do is push this metal plate back up. That's in the rail system. And push it up a tiny bit, and then you can just grab a screwdriver and put it through the hole just to kind of line this up a bit better. And then you get a screw, change the Allen keys again. Tighten this one. And then flip it over and tighten the other one. And like I said, you need to tighten the one behind this again at the back, but like I said before, I don't actually have that screw because I lost it. So, and then I'm just going to put these on while I'm at it. I might pull XCM rail panels. Click these on. Next thing you want to do is get the barrel and feed it in. And then you want to just put the upper receiver down for a minute, and then you get the lower receiver. Now, you want to reassemble this, so put the spring into this little hook, stand the gearbox up, feed this hook into the little hole in the front, and then put the charge handle down. But you need to make sure that when you pull the charge handle back, this whole system here goes with it. So if you actually put it here, it won't come with it. So you need to make sure that there's a little groove in the inside of the charge handle. You need to make sure you put that behind the this little piece here. And now open this up, because it should be closed so you don't damage it. And what we're basically going to do is put it together. So like I said, close the bolt cover with your other hand like this, and let it fly open. Now what you want to do is just close this bolt cover and make sure it opens. So there you go. Now the last thing I need to do is put the pec box on, but I'm not going to do that because it's going to waste time, and like, to be honest, most people probably don't even have those things. So that's it. That wraps up the disassembly and reassembly of the G&G Raider. Like I said, it may vary slightly. If it does, drop us a question in the comments, or even just send us a PM, or even on Facebook. We don't really mind, whatever. And I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. And if there's any other even requests, then you can put them down as well. I will be going through how to take apart a gas blowback CO2 powered 1911 soon, and likely we'll be doing a shimming guide on how to shim a gearbox as well. So if those two things are on your list, then they are on my list as well. So that's it for the disassembly video and reassembly. I hope this guide helps. Like, whatever you need it for, I hope it really does help you guys, because I know that good reassembly and disassembly videos are hard to find on YouTube and on the internet itself. So I hope this guide helps you guys. And if you ever see any of the Mercs out on a airsoft field anywhere, come over and say hi. And you know, it'd be nice to kind of put names to faces and even just a game alongside other airsofters. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I hope this video helps. Bye.